Hello, welcome back to the channel. I am Paul and this is Adventures After 60, and I thought I would do a little bonus video. I had just hit 700 subscribers, so just a little thank you video on how to walk faster with less effort, which might sound like it's just some kind of clickbaity title because it just kind of makes sense, right? If you're walking faster, you're going to be using more energy. You're not going to be using less effort. But if you think about it, if you think about two things, one would be the efficiency or economy of how you're walking or hiking. And then the other one will be how are you moving over the terrain. So if we can figure out a way to walk or hike, I'll just use walking instead of walk or hike, but same principle applies. But if we're walking with more economy of motion or more efficiency, then we're going to be using less effort. And similarly, if we're walking more efficiently over the terrain, we're also going to be using less effort. So why bother walking faster? Why bother even trying to walk faster? Well, if you're walking faster and you're just going to get yourself all tired out, then no, it doesn't really make any sense to do that. Because why are we out here? We're out here to maybe primarily enjoy being out in nature. I mean, that's at least why I'm out here. So if you end up more tired, then no, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. But if you're less tired, then what does that do for you? Well, it gives you more time to take breaks when you want to take breaks, or you get to your destination quicker and then you have more time at your destination. And it just feels good to move efficiently over the terrain. So let's talk about, first of all, economy. And I wanted to start out on something smooth. So I am on a road that hardly ever has any traffic. It parallels the Appalachian Trail here in Maryland. And so I thought I'd just start out on smooth pavement and talk about economy of walking or efficiency of walking, and then both downhill and uphill. And then I thought I would talk about moving over rougher terrain, like on the Appalachian Trail, and talk about how to move over the terrain more efficiently. So starting out with walking downhill. Well, if I back up just a second and we talk about just a general principle, and that would be, if you're walking downhill, what do we tend to do? And I see people doing this all the time. We tend to kind of lean back a little bit and really strike strongly on our heels, which of course slows you down with every step and puts a lot of stress on that tibialis anterior muscle, which can lead to shin splints, which can then lead to stress fractures. Maybe less so when you're walking than when you're running, but same principle applies. So instead of leaning back, which tends to be the natural thing to do, you really want to think about not leaning forward, because if I give you a cue, lean forward, how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to lean forward at the waist, and that's not going to be efficient. That's going to be less efficient. So if you think about leaning forward from the ankle, kind of a strange thing to think about, but if I just stop for a second, let's say I'm on the level, so let's say I'm just walking across this road where it's level, what's the very first thing that you do when you start to walk? The first thing you do is not pick up one foot, it's lean your entire body forward and then catch yourself, right? So you're actually falling forward and catching yourself with each step when you're walking. So if I'm walking downhill and I'm leaning back, I'm braking on every single step. So instead of doing that, well, if I literally leaned forward from the ankle, I'd probably just fall on my face. So you're not maybe literally leaning past vertical, but you are more upright or even slightly forward when you're walking downhill, and that just keeps you from braking as much on each step. I mean, you're still probably going to be braking a little bit, but it'll also lead you to have a faster stride rate which is another way to move with more economy and more efficiency. So just to kind of summarize that, I'm leaning forward from the ankle. In other words, I'm keeping myself upright, but my entire body is leaning forward a little bit so that my weight is going more forward, which is going to increase my stride rate, which is going to mean, again, less braking and a more efficient stride. And if I am thinking about let's say I'm thinking about not just leaning forward ankle, but I'm thinking about increasing my stride rate, I find that rather than thinking about increasing your stride rate with your legs, think about just using your arms a little bit as you're walking. So instead of just letting your arms swing completely naturally, actually actively swing your arms a little bit, and that's going to increase your stride rate without you having to think about increasing your stride rate. So you're just slightly using your arms a little bit more. I just find that to be an easier way to do it. And it'll also lead you to less, using those techniques, will lead you to a less vertical oscillation, right? Less up and down as you're walking. So you'll be walking more smoothly. You'll be putting less wear and tear on your joints, and the smoothness of the walking will enable you to be less likely to get injured and to walk faster with less effort, which is the goal. One other factor to think about is maybe to concentrate a little bit less on increasing speed going downhill and think about increasing speed going uphill a little bit more. Because if your goal is to walk faster, you're going to be spending, if you think about it, let's say you're walking, just to use round numbers, let's say you're able to walk 4 miles an hour going downhill and you're walking 2 miles an hour going uphill. That means at any given hill or any given distance, you're going to be spending twice the amount of time going uphill as you are going downhill. So an increase of, let's say, 10 or 20% speed going uphill is going to have double the effect on your overall speed. And then, of course, the other factor is you're more likely to get injured going downhill. So especially if you're going downhill on more technical terrain, that's where you're likely to sprain your ankle. That's where you're likely to fall, and potentially injure, let's say, your wrist. Wrist injuries are very common for hiking. And of course, there's also just more wear and tear in general when you're going downhill versus going uphill. So you're going to have a much bigger effect on your overall speed if you're thinking about increasing speed going uphill. And so I wouldn't concentrate too much on increasing speed going downhill, but definitely those two things that we talked about, lean forward at the ankle and also increase your stride rate, those two things are definitely going to increase your speed. But remember, they're not going to have the same effect as an equivalent increase in speed going uphill. So I just got off the road and got back on the Appalachian Trail, on a pretty technical part of the Appalachian Trail. And you'll notice I'm not looking at the camera very much. I'm looking at where I'm going because I don't want to fall on my face while I'm making this video. But some of the same principles apply. Definitely the idea of not leaning back as you're walking downhill is important, because you'll find that when you fall, it's likely because your weight was back, your weight was into your heels and not into the balls of your feet. So keeping the weight in the balls of your feet as you're going downhill is an important part of being able to walk smoothly and not getting injured by falling. So if I'm going downhill, I'm probably not going to be wanting to think about increasing my stride rate, but what I am going to want to think about is walking with more smoothness, right? To flow over the terrain, flow like water, right? Like Bruce Lee would say. So if I have a choice of walking in a manner that is smooth, where I'm not going up and down a lot, that's definitely the choice that I want to make. So if I just use as an example, just this little stretch of trail, and I'm going to turn the camera around so that you can see what I'm talking about. Each step that I take, I want to take in a manner that's going to minimize going up and down, because going up and down is going to put a lot more stress on my body and on my joints and on my muscles, and it's going to tire me out a lot faster. So if you just take a look at this stretch of trail. So as I'm going along, I have a big step here, right? So I could just go straight from here and step down like that, but instead of doing that, there's a smaller step going from here to here, and then from there to there. So rather than taking one large step down, as I walk, I'm going to go from here, I'm going to go to there, I'm going to go to there. And then similarly, let's say here, it might be hard to tell, but if I just go direct and I just go directly down, that's a larger step than if I go over here. So I want to take steps that are as smooth as possible. So I'm going from here to here, let's say to there. And so as I continue along this path, and I don't know how easy this is to tell, but let's say from right here, right, rather than stepping down, I've got a rock right here that's going to make that step smaller. So I can go here to here, then I'm taking like 2 half steps down instead of 1 full step down. Or here, I've got a half step here, a little quarter step, and another little half step. So I'm constantly thinking about, how can I walk more smoothly? How can I walk taking smaller downhill steps on any given terrain? If I were just bombing down this direct, and I would go, here to here to here to here, and I'm doing a lot of extra up and down, especially these downs, like these hard downs, right? So here to here, let's say. So that was a big one. So let's use that as another example. If I go from this step, and let's say just avoid this rock and step down completely, I mean, that's one way to do it. Or I can just take a smaller step, right? I can just take a smaller step here, with a faster stride rate and put a lot less stress on my body. So, and again, I'm stepping a lot more toward the ball of my foot, sometimes like just directly on the ball of my foot without using my heel at all. And it's just gonna make that a lot smoother.